I started having anxiety and despair. I was sitting in my car, it was a Mercedes-Benz with a roof that opened, looking up at a dark, starry night, figuring heaven was up there somewhere, and said, God, if you are up there, all I want is inner peace. Please help me.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see these flare gun moments, God shooting out the flare gun, getting our attention, these encounter stories with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences. Welcome. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Have an exercise for you if you can. Do you know, I just used AI to find out the answer for me. Do you know what's 500 miles away from you? If you're to go for a drive, is there something 500 miles away? So I just checked, and for instance, I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. Montreal is 500 miles away. Columbia, South Carolina, hi there, 500 miles away. St. Louis, Missouri, there you go, arch. Oh, look at that arch. Now, imagine wherever it is for you, find out what it is, and then imagine walking it. Why would St. Louis, how bad do I want to walk from here to under the arch? Maybe not so much. It's a long way, my God. And yet right now, there are thousands of people doing it at a particular place. You've heard of the Camino in northern Spain, 500 miles. And some of them are doing it to find themselves, find God. I think of the movie, The Way, Martin Sheen and his son Emilio Estevez. And I think, as I flash on the movie, it's like, why do people do it? For him, it seems like he needed to kill something. I think some people just need to kill something. Something inside themselves, die to self. And in his case, anger, maybe pride, whatever it was that needed to die. And I imagine maybe they don't know that's why they're walking it, but I think some people are out there killing something. Whatever gets in their way of being the person they want to be, the more loving person they want to be. I have two sisters who did it. I'm amazed by this still. They train for it. Your feet are going to get so blistered every day they were walking, and then got to get the right clothes, something they can rinse out at night and dries quickly and stick it on the next day and off they go again. Amazing experience. I think it interesting too that when I asked them afterwards, what's the takeaway? They couldn't tell me for a while. It was so deep, so spiritual. It was like, no, I can't. They weren't there for a while to fully try to explain what touched them, So in this episode, a gentleman by the name of John Sottosanti eventually gets there.
Felt the need to kneel. It felt so holy in there. So I knelt down, started praying over this casket, looking at a wooden cross on the wall about 20 feet away in front of me.
But first, well, there's another journey. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well. And how about you?
Doing great. Where are you?
I'm in San Diego.
Oh, that's right. The weatherman comes out and goes, same.
It's just about true.
It doesn't matter. It's 74 degrees. Same. It doesn't matter what time of year.
It is 74 right now.
See? Did you grow up a non-believer, or was there faith in the home at all?
My mother prayed for, she was a St. Monica. She called me a hopeless case, but I didn't have any belief. I was really bored with religion. My father went to church. He said to me as a little boy, John, to be respected in this country, you have to get an education. In fact, become a doctor and make lots of money, and then you'll be respected. So I think I was driven as a kid to eventually become successful because of Dad. I entered the Georgetown Medical Dental School, eventually went into practicing oral surgery, set up practice in San Diego, and I just seemed driven to be successful. So I had a very busy practice in no time at all. And by the age of 41, I was able to purchase a house overlooking the ocean. It was so close to the ocean that I could see the white water break on the sand, and I could hear the waves throughout the house. This is in San Diego, La Jolla.
This is not a cheap place you bought.
No, not at all.
This is prime country, best weather in the world, best beach, best everything, and you're on the beach.
And then I was sent around the world to lecture for the University of Southern California. I got several patents on bone grafting techniques, and I was living the life of Riley or whatever, and it was just incredible. I thought I could do no wrong, and I built this empire.
God's not a part of it, but he doesn't need God. Who needs God when you've got all of this stuff? But then there's that Bible verse for what does it profit a man to have a home on the beach in San Diego and a great dental practice, and what else is in that Bible verse? Oh, and a Mercedes in the garage, but forfeit his soul.
And I didn't wanna drive that Chevrolet that I had, so I went out to buy this Mercedes-Benz.
I just want to pause for a second and talk about this Mercedes because he wasn't going to own this car very long.
Thing was haunted. It had 5 things happen to it. The car almost killed me. The last accident my wife didn't, think, "Oh, just coincidence for the first 3 or 4 things." The last thing, a woman ran a red light, hit me head on. I ended up going to the hospital and wearing a neck brace for a month, and she said, the insurance company wanted to fix the car and give it back to me." And she said, "You are not getting back in that car." So I let the insurance company take it, and 2 months later, a lawyer called me and said, "Your car drove through a red light, hit a pickup truck, went through a gas station, hit the pumps, someone got the license plate number, and it drove on."
Well, maybe possessed. I mean, look, there's a series here. He's got his car. He's about ready to get into his car. His wife's in the passenger seat. He's standing there. A valet is bringing up another car behind his.
And then I hear the sound of the car being floored in neutral and shifted into first gear. The tire spun, the car sprung forward, smashed into my Mercedes, pushed it down this road. And remember, a restaurant in Beverly Hills, it hit Lamborghinis and Ferraris and things that were parked there and pushed my car out on La Cienega Boulevard, which is a huge busy street. The car stopped. I'm not in it. So I go running down to see if my wife and everybody's fine. They are. And the guy that was in the car that hit my car is a nice guy. And he said, "John, something happened. I didn't touch the car. I just got in it, turned it on, and it took off." So I didn't think anything of it. What a, freak accident.
Another one involved Valentine's Day because he's bought a necklace for his wife. He's left it in the jewelry bag on the seat of his car as he goes into a restaurant to have a business lunch.
And a cop comes in and says, "Anybody belong to this car?" And he reads off my license plate number. So we go out there. Someone had thrown a big rock through the back window. The rock was on the back seat. I immediately thought they stole the necklace. I look in the front seat. The necklace is still there. Cop says, "Well, this is really strange. Somebody would break into your car like this for no reason and not take anything." Okay, didn't think anything of it. So the these are all happening 2 to 4 weeks later.
Then there's the time he's at a stoplight. He's got a car in front of him, a car behind him. He's got nowhere to go.
And around the corner comes an old beat up car, and its left wheel breaks free of the car. And I'm 100 feet away. The wheel starts bouncing on the pavement, coming right at me. And I couldn't move because I couldn't move forward or backwards. So I lean towards my wife. The wheel hits my door, creases it, breaks my window, went over the roof and disappeared. Okay, that's third accident. And then a month later was the big one.
Yeah. Then you've got the one where he's going about 55 miles an hour and a woman blows through a red light and makes a left-hand turn into him.
Totally destroyed the car, but the insurance company wanted to fix it. And that's the haunted car because I would not get back in the car. At this point in my life, I wasn't sure God existed. But the fact that evil existed told me if evil exists, then the opposite exists for sure. And this stuff is all true.
So do you think you found God more through evil than through...
No, there was just that one incident.
Yeah.
Do you know the story of Alec Guinness predicting James Dean's death if he got in that little sports car?
No, I don't think I do.
Well, it was amazing. And what happened was a week before James Dean died, Alec Guinness was at a restaurant in Beverly Hills, and they turned him away because he didn't have a reservation. If you Google Alec Guinness, James Dean, you'll come to an interview out of London.
And then I heard feet running down the street, and it was James Dean. And he said, "I was in that restaurant, you couldn't get a table. And my name's James Dean." He said, "Will you come and join me?" So we said, yes, very kind of him. And then going back into the restaurant, he said, "Oh, before we go in, I must show you something. I've just got a new car." And there in the courtyard of this little restaurant was I don't know what the car was, some little silver, very smart thing, all done up in cellophane with a bunch of roses tied to its bonnet. And I said, "How fast can you drive in this?" He said, "Oh, I can do 150 in it." And I said, have you driven it? He said, no, I've never been in it at all. And some strange thing came over me, some almost different voice. And I said, look, I won't join your table unless you want me to, but I must say something. Please do not get into that car. Because if you do, and I looked at my watch, and I said, if you get into that car at all, it's now Thursday, 10 o'clock at night, and by 10 o'clock at night, next Thursday, you'll be dead if you get into that car. I said, oh, nonsense. So we had dinner, we had a charming dinner, and he was dead the following Thursday afternoon in that car. It was one of those
Extraordinary.
odd things.
Has it ever happened to you before?
No, I'm glad to say. But it was one of those very, very odd, spooky.
Wow. This thing was just surrounded by oddity.
Well, what happened was they sold the parts of James Dean's car, and they tracked where those parts went. And people either died or went to the hospital just by having, like, the tires put on their car or
Interesting story, whatever that is. But getting back here to John, who's going through issues, whether they be car or now he's got financial issues.
I had a major embezzlement by a key employee that was probably $200,000 or $300,000 by today's dollars. And then I had a contractor take us, without paying his subcontractors, took us for at least $500,000 to $700,000. And we had paid him off. And then we got lien notices, and the city said that we're going to close our office down because the subcontractors had not been paid. So we had to pay the subcontractors.
God will certainly allow things to happen to get our attention and have us looking up.
Stress and many things happened, and I started having anxiety and despair. I had to do something, and then I started saying, I can't do this, and I have to turn to God. And I remember the night I was sitting in my car. It was a Mercedes-Benz with the roof that opened.
Is this the possessed one?
This was the possessed, looking up at a dark, starry night, figuring heaven was up there somewhere, if it existed. And I looked up and said, God, if you are up there, because I wasn't sure that he existed, God, if you're up there, all I want is inner peace. Please help me. It was that act of submission, and it was amazing how things started happening starting on the very next day. The very next day, I go into a bookstore, and I wanted a book on tape. A fictional book is what I thought I'd get, but I ended up getting a book that was more of a spiritual book, and it was written by this guy by the name of Gerald Jampolsky. And I listened to it in the car, and it started feeding these spiritual thoughts and things about Christian principles in my mind. And it was so amazing that I decided to get all of his books. So I had 3 or 4 of his books, and then I listened to them on tape in the car, so I knew his voice. And the way God works is amazing. About 4 weeks later, I'm taking my kid up to San Francisco to go visit Stanford University, and I never get to the airports early on the return trip. But I got there a half hour early, and I'm reading Jampolsky's book, and I hear his voice in my ears. And I say, am I going crazy? What is this? I look up, and there's this man with his back to me talking on a phone, and he's saying, the car was supposed to come get me, but it didn't come. Oh, I have to wait another half hour type thing? Okay. So he hangs up the phone, and he starts walking away. And I said, I've got nothing to lose. I don't know if this is Jim Polsky or not. It sure sounds like him. So I say, Jerry? He turns around and looks me in the eye and says, oh, I've been looking for you. And I said, no, you haven't been looking for me. You're looking for your ride. I said, you don't know me, but I know you. And I hold up his book. I knew his voice so well. We had this half-hour incredible conversation. He invited me for a seminar, and it was just an amazing experience. And that led me to meeting him and getting to know him, following his principles, which opened me up to more things.
What was the name of that book?
Love is letting go of fear.
Love is letting go. We talk a lot about fear around here because I think it's the center of everything.
Well, it is. You operate from 2 extremes. You either operate from love, which is where we want to be, which is where the Bible tells us to be, where Jesus told us to be, or we operate out of the extreme, which is fear. And so if you're not operating out of love, you're moving towards that fear.
I'm convinced we either do what we do or don't do what we don't do based on fear, in large part. And love, obviously, perfect love, as it says, drives out fear.
That opened me up to being more open to, say, the Christian religion. And my wife convinced me to go to a 5-year Bible study in San Diego, non-denominational one that was packed. And then that opened me up to going on a Catholic Cursillo weekend that my friends talked me into going, where you spend 3 or 4 days in the mountains and you learn to have a personal relationship with God. That impressed the heck out of me. So I come back from that Cursillo week, and now I'm even more open to the spirit and to the belief system. And I'm on the phone with somebody who I'd met on the weekend, and I said to him, John, would you like to have lunch sometime in the next couple of weeks? Do you have any time? He said, oh, I have loads of time. He said, my wife, Judy, just left for Spain. She'll be gone for 6 weeks. I said, really? She's taking a course over there? He said, no, she's walking the Camino de Santiago. And I didn't have any idea of this 500-mile pilgrimage route from France up to the northwest part of Spain, where St. James' bones are buried in Santiago de Compostela. So being a type A personality like I am, I went on Amazon and bought 5 books on the Camino. Meantime, my son calls me and says, Dad, I got some bad news. Martha's had 2 miscarriages, and we were just in to see the doctor, and he said we're never going to be able to have children. At least the odds were greatly against it. And again, I wanted to control things. And so as I'm reading through the book on the Camino de Santiago, I found out there's a little town in northern Spain on the Camino called San Juan de Ortega. And that in the year somewhere around 1470, Queen Isabella of Spain went over there to pray in the tomb of this saint, San Juan de Ortega, for a son, because she had a daughter, but 7 years went by and she had a miscarriage and could not get pregnant and have a son. So she prayed in the tomb, and I don't know what experience she had spiritually, but I do know that she got pregnant and 9 months later had a son. And the reason why she went to that particular tomb was that he was living in the 1200s, and in the 1400s, early 1400s, they opened his casket, I guess, to declare him a saint, and honeybees flew out of the casket, and they are a symbol of fertility. So word spread around Europe that you go to this saint buried in this little town, population 12 when I went through it, and you go down and pray at his tomb. So she did that, and I said, I'm going to do that.
All right, let's do this. However, he wants to do the Camino, but I'm thinking about my sisters here walking 10 miles a day. That's 50 days all by itself, closing in on a couple of months if things get a little squirrely and you have to get delayed along the way or whatever. And he doesn't have that much time. Some people bike it. That he thinks he can do. Can he do 50 miles a day on a bike? That's going to be the goal. He gets some friends to go along with it. He's set to go, headed for Camino de Santiago.
We did ride 50 miles a day, but I really wasn't, a trained cyclist or anything. I trained a little bit beforehand up and down mountains, but it was going to be tough. There are 3 mountain ranges that you cross on the Camino. So I started talking to God, which I had really never done before. And I said, God, I really want a grandchild. I'm going to devote this trip to you, and I know I'm going to suffer on it because I know how difficult it's going to be to climb these mountains. And I said, so I will suffer as much as I have to, but I will never get in the van.
The van, you get tired, you want to ride up to the top of the mountain, then coast down. Just get in the van. Well, John, he's on a mission here. His prayer is the suffering on the bike, so he doesn't get in the van. He rides.
And I had cramps, I had saddle sores, I had everything going against me, and I would not do it. In fact, the day that I rode into San Juan de Ortega to pray, I had almost been killed by a Mack truck. I was coming up a hill, hadn't seen a car in a while, so I'm riding in the middle of a hill racing, and there was a blind curve at the top of the hill, and there were 2 buildings built right up against the road, so there was no place to pull off the road. And again, this is strange, but an old man came out of nowhere that actually resembled my grandfather who had passed away, and he starts moving his arms for me to go to the right of the road. So I look up, and this Mack truck's coming right at me, not slowing down. So I turn the wheel to the right, crash into the building on purpose, hit off the building, hit the pavement as the back wheels of the truck passed by my ear within 10 inches. And I get up with bleeding knees, but I had made this promise to the Lord that I was going to get on the bike and do the whole Camino. So I get back on the bike, and I limped into this town called San Juan de Ortega. And in that town, I go into that church all by myself in the dark, and my eyes saw this tomb. I was on an upper level. There were two levels, and it's wet, moldy concrete. And I've got my bare legs, but I felt the need to kneel. It felt so holy in there. So I knelt down, started praying over this casket, looking at a wooden cross on the wall about 20 feet away in front of me. And all of a sudden, I couldn't believe my eyes. Superimposed on that wooden cross, which was 6 feet tall approximately, was a 3-foot cross. Blazing though. At first I thought it was just flashing lights, but it was like tons of flame, and it divided. The cross just divided. And in this case, the original cross stayed there, but two crosses came off. So I'm now looking at 3 blazing crosses. The 2 outer crosses divide. Looking at 5 blazing crosses, they divide. I'm now looking at 7 blazing crosses. And I'm a scientist. I'm thinking, how can this be? This cannot be happening. I had been to Disneyland and I thought they're using animatronics and there's something, going on here. So I look around the back wall and it's solid. Now I just said, there is no rational because these crosses are still there. So I just say, this is a Holy Spirit moment. I've been blessed. And so I started praying and I did again my Our Father, Hail Mary, Act of Contrition, Glory be, over and over again, and all of a sudden this peace and calm, if you can describe a Holy Spirit moment, but I felt certain that God was there, Holy Spirit, the Trinity, whatever, was there with me, and that Martha was going to get pregnant and have a baby. And to make a long story short, that's what happened. Within a week of that visit to the tomb of San Juan de Ortega, she got pregnant, had a normal pregnancy to 9 months, gave birth to someone who she called Tommy. Tommy just graduated from Yale University. He's 6'5", very healthy, very smart boy. So I consider that a miracle.
I would say, let's pause right about here. Quick Patreon shout out to Burley, who was on one of these here episodes. Burley Freight, thank you so much for joining the Patreon family and making this all go week to week. We appreciate your support. I was just talking to Alicia Compton, one of our Patreon supporters, about the whys and wherefores and what she appreciates and how she just knows that in each one of us, we all have a story somewhere.
How God touches us is unique, and everybody, everyone's an individual. Everybody responds uniquely to things. So I do feel like everybody has a unique individual story to share. And we just need to share them because he's real. Jesus is real. He will find you and speak to you in the way that you need.
Thanks, Alicia. So I guess I should ask here too, what's your story? Get a hold of me here at touchedbyheaven.net. The stories and the financial support make this happen every week. Thank you so much. touchedbyheaven.net. Click your way through to patreon.com. Here on Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. What do you take from that?
That God cares, and there was some sacrifice that I made.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an unbelievable commitment. I mean, frankly, got killed, yet I still able to limp into town and get on my knees, on bloody knees, and pray. So since that time, obviously that was in 2001.
So did that turn you completely around, or just once again the flicker turned a little brighter?
It turned me around, but I hadn't. Remember, my mother made me go to confession once a year. So the last time I went to confession was I was 18. So now I'm 59 years old. 41 years later, I hadn't been to confession, and so going to confession was scary. So I didn't go right away. But that took place in, say, the summer. The trip to Spain took place in the summer of 2001. Well, what happened in September 2001? So on September 11th, we saw the towers coming down, all those people dying, and that death. And I thought death can happen to anybody at any point in time unexpectedly. And I was on the National Board of Trustees of the American Academy of Periodontology. So I was in Chicago at least 6 times a year. And so I went to the cathedral in Chicago to an unknown priest, and I confessed 41 years worth of sins. And then I definitely got turned around.
8 years later, another encounter moment. John is diagnosed with prostate cancer, aggressive prostate cancer. he prays. He prays for the intercession of Padre Pio, St. Padre Pio. Gets a nudge. Lourdes, France, the water of Lourdes, St. Bernadette, all of that, right? So that's where he wants to go, says to his wife, Ioana, and she says, yeah, they both head on over.
And I'll never forget going into the baths at Lourdes, France, again, totally distraught and losing it psychologically and could not concentrate, worried as could be. And in those baths, I experienced this peace. I have this picture of the Virgin Mary as she appeared there at Lourdes, and you pray to her and to God and to Jesus. And coming out of those baths, but I had this amazing peace. And I came back home and was able to go back to work and be very peaceful. And I ended up going through some treatment. I'm not even sure I had to. And, I'm, 16, 17 years later now, totally cancer free.
Sometimes timing is everything, right? So he's lecturing over in Switzerland. Happens to be a time not all that far away. The Shroud of Turin is going to be on display. One of the few times, John says like 3 times a century, they bring out this supposed, possible, it is, burial cloth of Jesus Christ for display.
Right before the Camino trip. So I made plans to go over and see it. And I was lucky because most people only get 4 minutes with the shroud, where I got almost an hour. This is the year 2000, a Jubilee year. So here I am, a surgeon, and here I am in a front row seat, basically, right in front of the shroud, where everybody else had to leave. They were all in this big line, but the local parishioners had taken over all the seats. But one opened up just as I was filing out, right there in front of the shroud. So I had an hour to look at the shroud. And what I took away from it was all the suffering that Christ went through. And the blood was so realistic on the shroud that it made a definite impact on me.
What are the odds, too? Today I interviewed our parish, St. Bernadette, Westlake, Ohio, has a podcast as well. I play co-host on along with Father Joe Menkhaus. And
Yes.
Our guest today was a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Judge, who was kind of a secondary part of the original testing of the Shroud of Turin.
Oh, I know that.
With Stirps and all of that. He was kind of he was a pathologist that got involved in some of the, like the blood study and all that. And I asked him, I said, what was that like? I said, you're looking and all the evidence is there. And in case you don't know about the shroud, it's just, here's this burial cloth, which just coincidentally seems to have all the wounds of Christ, including crown of thorns and the spear wound in the side and type AB blood and all the minerals and
Right.
pollen from the shroud or from
Jerusalem.
first century. I mean, it all adds up. It's obviously the burial cloth of Jesus.
Obviously.
And I said, there you are. You're looking at, you're in the microscope, you're testing this stuff and you're looking at Jesus's blood. What is that like? And he said, it's humbling.
It is.
It's humbling when you say, how did I get here? How did I
Well,
get
I feel the same way. I didn't get that close where he was with the famous Shroud of Turin University Research Project, 1978. But I was given a gift to be able to be that close to the blood. And all I remember was looking at that blood for almost an hour and tears coming to my eyes. We could go on and on about the Shroud
Oh
of
my
Turin.
gosh. And it was great. I'll get John Judge on this podcast as well, because it's fascinating to go through that process
Mhm.
of all the testing that's been done. And it's a no-brainer, it's a no-brainer. We were talking about all the different little pieces of information about it, but Father Spitzer at EWTN, I thought, put it well, because there's this image that was created on the shroud that happened during an event, maybe a resurrection, because something happened that the power of 8 billion watts was shot into this burial cloth for 1/40th of a billionth of a second. They know that.
Yeah,
They
you
know
got
that.
Father Spitzer's numbers.
Incredible, impossible numbers. Any more than that, and it would have blown the tomb apart,
Nobody can reproduce that today. And today we're experts in imaging
You
and
can't do
all
it.
kinds
And they tried to make it a painting, and that doesn't work. And just,
of three-dimensional information embedded into it.
oh, it's beautiful. So we'll
it's
talk
incredible
about
stuff.
that down the road as well. It's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
With all the experience that I've had of my life, which are somewhat supernatural, I'd say they are supernatural. And, I think the best thing I have going for me is I have a scientific background. I mean, I've written 20, 30 papers in the scientific literature. I was president of the California State Society of Periodontists. I have a reputable background of being truthful, and I've been married to the same woman for 50 years. And yet here I say, "Hey, God talked to me. He pursued me," and it's hard for them to say you're lying.
Beautiful story, John. Just beautiful story.
Thank
What
you.
what made you write it down?
Well, interesting, COVID hit, and, a friend of mine who lives in Wisconsin, we were talking, and he's a English professor, and he started hearing my stories, and he said, "You gotta write those down," and then COVID hit, and I thought, "Well, why not?"
And the book is called Mortal Adhesions.
Ortho adhesions.
And what does that mean?
Well, the mortal means that we're mortal beings, and the adhesions are the addictions that stick to us. And we spend our whole life trying to we don't try to we accumulate these addictions and sins. The seven deadly sins I really get into in the book. And what we really need to do is shed all those sins and turn to God. And that's what's life all about, and that's what will give you happiness.
And that's what you discovered. I always ask my guest the takeaway when you look at your life, and you've had a heck of a life, and being away and then coming back, and God coming after you as he comes after all of us. What's your takeaway in all this?
Yeah, my takeaway was that moment, in the Mercedes with the sky roof open, saying, God, if you're up there, all I want is inner peace. So anybody out there who is not a true believer or is struggling with their faith, just turn to God and ask for help and be willing to submit to what he wants for you.
Amen. My new favorite prayer given to me by Father Joe Menkhaus is, Come Holy Spirit, help me Jesus.
Yeah,
And
good.
I have found that prayer to be so powerful, so simple, calling on the Holy Spirit, the power of Holy Spirit, help me Jesus. He wants us to ask for his help. He wants us to surrender everything, and you just take it, please. And he does.
He does.
He'll answer that prayer.
Well, I'll tell you, I think my life is a story of it happening. So that's why I had to write it down.
Well, this has been a delight, John.
Same, Trapper. We didn't know each other. I feel like I know you because I've watched a bunch of your shows, and this has been a delightful conversation. I thank you so much.
I thank you as well. Good luck with the book. We'll put a link in the show notes. And once again, it's called Mortal Adhesions. Takeaways for me. You look back at that prayer. Here's what strikes me about the prayer. He's sitting there in that Mercedes, right, looking up. He doesn't say, I'd like a car a little more reliable. He doesn't say, about my financial situation, the money drain, you could kind of plug the whole. No, he says, I want inner peace. I'm looking to you, God. I'm looking for inner peace. God, help me. Jesus, help me. Now there's a prayer that's going to get answered. And that's when everything started turning around. He talked about the next day, he's getting a book, an audio book, and then he's sitting almost next to the guy who wrote the book. It's his voice in the airport. And that leads to Bible study. And then this time of this kind of Bible study on a mountaintop and meeting some people that he calls. And then, your wife's going to where in Spain? And suddenly he wants to go, and he has a prayer. He wants to be a grandpa, and he wants his son and daughter-in-law to have a child and go. For that purpose, he goes, finds that chapel, prays that prayer, has an experience there, supernatural experience, all of this. God just bringing this lost sheep into the fold so beautifully. And then adding to that, of course, Lourdes, France, and the Shroud and all of that. Just a beautiful, beautiful story. And then, there's a story I haven't heard yet. I think it's yours. What is your story? Let me know here at touchedbyheaven.net. Thanks for the Patreon help again. Appreciate that. Keeps it going. And I'll see you next week here at Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack, your humble podcast host. Oh, before you go, John, any advice for me, said podcaster?
Become a doctor and make lots of money, and then you'll be respected.